Chandra Dynasty. Shukdev says, Parikshit, now I narrate about Chandra Dynasty. Many great and pious kings like Pururava had occurred in this dynasty. Chandrama was the son of Atri, the son of Brahma. Budh was the son of Chandrama while Pururava was the son of Budh. Ila was the mother of Pururava. He was very virtuous. Attracted by his virtues, the Apsara Urvashi had approached Pururava with a sensual desire. Pururava welcomed Urvashi, and together they begot 6 sons: Ayu, Shrutayu, Satyayu, Ray, Vijay and Jal. In the lineage of Vijay the son of Pururava, there had occurred a king Gadi. Gadi had a daughter Satyavati. Satyavati was married to the sage Richak. Richak and Satyavati begot Jamdagni, who married Renuka, the daughter of sage Renu. Jamdagni and Renuka begot Parshuram. In the same lineage, later on, occurred great kings like Rantidev, Shibi, Yadu, Kuru, Puru, Dushyant and Bharatha. In this lineage of Kuru, King Shantanu had married Ganga, who gave birth to Bhisma. Satyavati, the daughter of Nishad, was the second wife of Shantanu. She begot Chitrangad and Vichitravirya. Chitrangad had died in an encounter with a demigod of his own name, while Vichitravirya was married to Ambika and Ambalika, the princesses of Kashi. But, having too much carnal indulgence with his wives, Vichitravirya soon developed tuberculosis and died without producing a child. Since Bhisma had vowed to abide by celibacy till death, so Vyasa was summoned to produce children from Ambika and Ambalika. From Vyasa the 2 queens and a maid gave birth to Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura respectively. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons. The Kauravas, while Pandu's wife Kunti begot Karan, Yudhishthir, Bhima and Arjuna. Pandu's second wife Madri begot Nakul and Sahdev. Arjuna had married Subhadra, the sister of Lord Krishna also. Subhadra had begot Abhimanyu, who was married to Uttara, the daughter of Viratraja, and you were born to Uttara, O Parikshit. In Yaduvansh, lineage of Yadu, a king Shursen had occurred. He had a son Vasudev. Vasudev had 8 wives. Devki was the prominent among them. 9 children were born to them. Kansa, the brother of Devki, killed 6 of them. 7th was Balram, 8th Krishna, and at 9th place was her daughter Subhadra. Shukdev says, O Parikshit, Lord himself had appeared as the son of Vasudev and Devki. Whenever the religion and religious virtues fall in the world and sins rises, the omnipotent, Lord Sri Hari takes incarnation to destroy the evils, and protect the pious ones and establish the religion again. When the evil demons took the guise of the kings and began to rout the earth, Lord Vishnu then took the incarnation as Lord Krishna. Along with him, Sheshnaga, his bed, also took incarnation as Balram, in Yaduvansh. Together they presented such divine plays that even the gods could not guess them. At the same time, to benefit the devotees, who would be born in Kali Yuga, Lord Krishna expounded his pious life into uncountable incidents. Merely by reciting and hearing the tales of Lord's life, all the sorrows, melancholies and ignorance of the devotees are removed. Through the battle of Mahabharata between Kauravas and Pandavas, Lord Krishna relieved the earth of most of her burdens. He himself slayed many demons, while got many slain by Balrana. Ultimately, preaching Uddhava about metaphysical knowledge, Lord Krishna departed to his divine abode. Chapter 10. Hearing the tales of royal dynasties from Shukdev, King Parikshit requested, Guruva, You have just narrated the surprising tale of Suryavansh and Chandravnash, dynasties. Now I wish to hear the tales of Lord Krishna's life in detail. It was because of God's grace that my ancestors could successfully win the Mahabharata. I too had experienced Lord's grace while I was an unborn child, and Ashwatthama had triggered Brahmastra to destroy me. It was the Lord himself who saved me from the heat of Brahmastra with his wheel. O sage, therefore, kindly narrate the tale of Krishna's life, who is the soul of every living being. I do not feel thirsty or hungry while hearing the pious tale of God's life from you. Pleased by the pure devotion of Parikshit for God, Shukdev says, when the atrocities of evil demons increased on earth beyond a certain limit, the perplexed earth reached to Brahma in the guise of a cow, and vented her sorrows. Brahma took her and Lord Shiva to Lord Vishnu and prayed him through Purusha Sukta. Lord heard their prayers and said, I know about the sufferings of poor earth. Very soon, I'll take incarnation in Yaduvansh to elevate her burden. All the gods should take birth in Yadukul to assist me during my human incarnation. And to serve my beloved Radha, all the apsaras should appear as the womenfolk of Yadu community. Brahma dictated the gods and said that even Yoga Maya, personification of illusions, of Lord Vishnu would take a partial incarnation to assist the Lord in his place. Thus consoling the earth, Brahma returned to his abode. Marriage of Vasudeva and Devaki. Shirsen's son Vasudeva was married to Devaki, the daughter of Devak. After the marriage ceremony, Ugrasen's son and Devaki's cousin Kansa was driving the chariot of newly wedded couple. On the way, a celestial voice proclaimed, O fool Kansa, the eighth son of your beloved sister, whose chariot you are driving so affectionately, shall be the cause of your death. Hearing the voice, Kansa drew out his sword to kill Devaki. But Vasudeva prayed to him politely, Prince Kansa, you are the descendant of Goj dynasty. You are a brave man. It does not fit you bravery that you are yourself ready to kill your sister. She is a woman and has just got married. She has not done any harm to you. She deserves pity. If you fear her children, I promise that I will give all her children to you. Thus assured by truth-abiding Vasudeva's words, Kansa dropped the idea of killing Devaki. As per his promise, Vasudeva gave his first newborn child to Kansa. Pleased by Vasudeva's abidance to truth, Kansa said, Your eighth son will be my enemy, so I will kill only your eighth son. Take the child back. At the same time, singing in Lord's praise, Devarishi Narada appeared there and said, O Kansa, in view of rising atrocities of demons, Lord Narayana himself will take birth in Yaduvansh. Besides him, all the cowboys and all others who belonged to Yadav clan are none other than the gods in human guise. The gods are making massive preparations to exterminate evil kings, and as a lotus has only 8 petals and no one can mark out its 8th petal, similarly, Devaki will have 8 children and no one would be able to find out who is the 8th. Saying this, Devarishi Narada disappeared. Kansa got firm belief that all the Yaduvanshis were gods and that Lord Vishnu himself would take birth as Vasudeva and Devaki's son to kill him. He, therefore, put Vasudeva and Devaki in the prison. Since then Kansa killed the children one by one soon after their birth. Shesh Narayana himself appeared as the 7th son. While he was still unborn, Lord Vishnu through his Yogmaya, personified illusion, transferred the embryo in Rohini's womb. Lord dictated Yogama that she herself should take birth from Yashoda, the wife of Nand, in Gokul. He also blessed her that in future, people would worship her as Durga, Chandika, Bhadrakali, Narayani, Vaishnavi, etc. When the seventh fetus was transferred, Kansa got worried how was it destroyed. His fears and melancholy increased since then. A fear gripped him that his death was very near now. Arrival of God in unborn baby. Kansa had known that during the battle between the gods and demons he was the demon Kalnemi, and he was killed by Lord Vishnu. So fearing Lord Vishnu rallying with Yaduvanshis, Kansa cultivated high degree of hostility towards them. He captured even his father Ugrasen and put him in the prison. Now the reign of the kingdom was entirely in his hands. Kansa was himself very strong and also had the assistance of his father-in-law, Jasant. Formidable demon like Pralam, Baka, Chanur, Trinavat, Agassur, Mustik, Arisht, Dvivid, Pupna, Kashi and Dhenuk were his courtiers. As a result of Kansa atrocities, en mass exodus of Yaduvanshis from Mathura followed. These Yaduvanshis left Mathura and settled in regions like Kuru, Panchal, etc. Still some of them accepted to serve Kansa, but only superficially. When all pervasive Lord saw that Yaduvanshis were being tortured without reason, he transferred his glory in Vasudeva. Through Vasudeva, Devaki received that brilliant part of the Lord. On the other hand, Kansa also came to know about Devaki's eighth issue. Since then his hostility surged unprecedentedly and he began to wait for the birth of Devaki's eighth son very anxiously. All it means to say that Kansa mind reflected on God every moment, day in and day out. Birth of Lord Krishna. The long-awaited day also arrived at last. It was the 8th day in the waning, darker, phase of the lunar month of Bhadrapada, corresponding to August-September. Rohini, the brightest star, was rising while dense clouds had gathered in the sky. Before actual arrival, Lord manifested himself before Vasudeva and Devaki. They felt as if a full moon had risen in the east. Vasudeva saw that an extraordinarily marvelous baby boy was standing before them. His eyes were as soft as lotus, he had 4 arms and held a conch, make, wheel and lotus. He bore kaustubh money in the neck and wore yellow clothes. Valuable ornaments adorned all parts of his body. Thus, seeing God himself arrived as his son, Vasudeva was overwhelmed. Devaki too was overjoyed but feared Kansa first. Then she joyfully prayed to God. God said then, during Swayambhu Manvanta, both of you had worshipped me with a desire of son. Vasudeva was a Prajapati Sutapa while you were his wife Prishni. You had worshipped me with pure hearts. Pleased by your penance, I had asked you to seek a boon, so you had sought a son like me in virtues. I had arrived then as your son Prishanigab. In the next birth you were Kashyapa and Aditi and I was Upendra. Now, in the third birth also, I have arrived as your son. Saying this, the Lord transformed himself into an ordinary baby. From the inspiration of God, Vasudeva wished to move the baby out of the prison. Instantaneously, all the locks of the jail opened automatically and the guards fell asleep. Carrying the baby in a winnow, Vasudeva set out for Gokul across the river Yamuna. It was raining heavily, so Sheshnaga followed them shading the baby with his hoods. Vasudeva entered the river Yamuna. Yamuna too felt overjoyed that her most beloved Lord has come to her. Hence, she began to rise in order to touch his feet. Dangling his feet behind Vasudeva, God let Yamuna touch them. Touching the feet, the swelling river receded at once and gave Vasudeva a safe passage. Crossing the river, Vasudeva reached Gokul. There, he entered the home of Nand and kept the baby beside Yashoda and took her newborn baby girl and brought her to the prison. As soon as Vasudeva kept the baby girl in Devki's lap, the gates locked up again and the gods awakened. The baby, who was actually Yogamaya, personification of illusion, began to cry. The gods at once ran to inform Kansa about the birth. Kansa came running and snatched the baby from Devki and proceeded to throw her on the stone. But before he could throw her, the baby escaped from his hands and assumed Ashtbhuji, eight-armed, Durga appearance in the sky and reprimanded him, "O fool, why are you trying to kill me, when you can't even harm me? The one who will kill you has already appeared. Now stop killing the innocent children." Kansa stood stunned by the talks and appearance of the goddess. Goddess Bhagwati disappeared and became omnipresent. She is now venerable with different names in different locations. After the disappearance of goddess Yogamaya, Kansa felt remorse. He at once fell at the feet of his sister Devki and brother-in-law Vasudeva and began to beg their pardon. Thereafter, Kansa released both of them. In the morning, Kansa held a discussion with his ministers. The ministers, who were formidable demons themselves, assured Kansa that they would kill all the babies born within 10 days and destroy the Brahmans, cows, gods, ascetics and all those who could pose potential danger to him. Shukdev says, "O Parikshit, the demons were Rajoguni, having royal virtues, and Tamoguni, virtues of darkness, and hence were unable to differentiate good from evils. Their extermination was imminent. That was why they cultivated hostility towards saints and saintly people. O king, those who disregard saintly people lose their life, wealth, reputation, religion and everything." Festivities in Gokul over Lord's birth. Devki's seventh baby was transferred before birth into the womb of Rohini. The baby was born as Baldevji. At his birth, Brahmans blessed Nand. But laughingly Nand said, "O holy Brahmans, this baby is not mine. It is born to my friend's wife." Brahmans said then, "Okay Baba, we will return only when your wife bears a child." The Brahmans thereafter organized grand worships. By their blessings Yashoda conceived. It was Wednesday, the 8th day in the darker phase of the lunar month Bhadrapada, August-September, when Yashoda said to her sister-in-law Sunanda, "Sister, kindly wake me up when the baby takes birth." Sunanda laughed at that. It was in fact the influence of Yogamaya. When Yogamaya took birth, all the people around her were fast asleep and continued to sleep until Vasudeva came there and replaced the baby girl with baby boy. Soon after Vasudeva left, Yashoda awakened from slumber and saw an extremely beautiful baby boy beside her. Nand was meditating then in the cowshed. He was informed at once. His heart too filled with supernatural joy. He took his bath and donned new clothes. Then he summoned the Brahmans and got necessary rituals performed, served the gods and his ancestors and donated cows, clothes, ornaments and cereals to the Brahmans. As Nand was the chief of Vraj region, so all the people decided to celebrate baby's birth. All the houses, streets and lanes were cleaned and sprinkled with scented waters. All the gateways were embellished with flags, pylons and festoons. All the villagers began to gather in and around Nand's home. Ladies folk also felt overjoyed by the news of the birth of Yashoda's son. Even the cows, oxen and calves also were adorned beautifully. Brahma, Narada, Sankadi etc. were all having the sight of Lord from heaven. Even Lakshmi appeared in Gokul, illuminating all the azimuths. Gopis, ladies folk, decorated their palms with henna, anointed themselves with ubatan, a paste composed of gram flour and many herbs, supposed to enhance beauty, and took bath. Then they adorned themselves from tip to toes and set out for nuns' homes with various gifts. At nuns' home they sprinkled the baby with water containing turmeric and oil and sang auspicious songs loudly. Thus, when Lord appeared in Braj, grand celebration was organized in his welcome, auspicious music was played. The menfolk celebrated the joy spraying one another with milk, curd, butter etc. None presented the people generously with clothes, ornaments and cows. Prisoners, ascetics and beggars were given alms. At the request of none, Rohini herself welcomed the womenfolk. Since the arrival of Lord, prosperity too came to stay in Vraj. Salvation of Putna. Shukdev says, Parikshit, after many days, entrusting other Gopals with the honors of guarding Gokul, none went to Mathura to pay annual taxes in Kansa's court. Vasudeva too learned about his arrival and went to see him. None felt overjoyed to see Vasudeva and embraced him affectionately. Vasudeva asked Nand, your age is declining now. It is very fortunate now that you have also got a son. My son Balram and wife Rohini are staying with you. He would be regarding you as his parents. Nand said, the evil Kansa killed many of your children. He did not even spare your daughter. No doubt, happiness and sorrow are bound to one's fate. Vasudeva said, brother, now your duties here are over. You should not stay here for long, because I fear some disturbances in Gokul in your absence. Hearing this, Nand at once set out for Gokul. In the way, he reflected over the words of Vasudeva and prayed God, may God, everything be well in Gokul. There in Gokul, however, a curious incident took place. After his discussion with evil ministers, Kansa had sent a cruel ogress Putna to kill all the newly born babies in his kingdom. In the guise of an extremely pretty woman, Putna entered Gokul. She hypnotized the menfolk with her sweet smile and flirting glances. She searched newborn babies here and there and entered Nand's home eventually. Baby Lord Krishna was sleeping in the cradle. He had known about her arrival, but posed as if he were asleep. Putna is a form of non-knowledge with an alluring outward appearance. Lord Krishna was only 6 days old then. Putna's breasts were filled with poison, such as someone lifts a sleeping snake mistaking it for a rope. Similarly, Putna lifted the baby who proved her death. Putna took the baby to secluded place and began to breastfeed him. Lord prayed to Lord Shiva, who came to stay in his throat and drank all the poison from the milk. Thereafter the Lord began to suck Putna's life. Perplexed, Putna began to cry loudly and writhe nervously. As her death approached, she regained her real, ogress appearance. All the men and women were frightened when they saw the huge, formidable body of Putna. But when they saw Krishna playing nearby, their fear gone, and with joy they lifted the baby and soothed him. Meanwhile, Nand and his fellow Gopas too arrived from Mathura. Putna's body testified the truth of Vasudeva's words. Gopas cut Putna's body into many pieces and burned them outside Gokul. When her body was burning, a sweet smell of agar, a kind of scented wood used in incense making, spread all around. Because Lord himself had fed on her milk, so all her sins were destroyed. Lord regarded her as his mother and hence saved her. Killing of Shakat. When Lord Krishna was 27 days old, a festival was organized in Gokul. Mata Yashoda bathed the baby while the Brahmins recited hymns. Yashoda saw that baby was feeling sleepy, so putting him in a cradle, she left it under a cart. The cart was loaded with pitchers of milk, curd and butter. After some time, Lord Krishna awoke and began to cry for a feed. But amidst festivities, Yashoda could not hear his cries. Meanwhile, a demon Shatrasur rode the cart, wishing to press the cart and thereby kill the Lord. But before he could act, the Lord touched the cart with his feet, and lo and behold, the cart turned over, and all the utensils kept on it came crashing down. Even the demon was crushed to death under the cart. Other boys, who were playing nearby, informed the gopis, ladies folk, that the little Kanhaiya had turned over the loaded cart, but they did not believe the kids. Yashoda ran in horror and lifted the baby in her lap. The Brahmins recited pacifying hymns then. Thereafter the baby was bathed again with sanctified water. A feast of Brahmins followed then. Ultimately they were seen off with many gifts. Salvation of Trinavat. Once Mata Yashoda was playing with the baby Lord in her home. All of a sudden she felt as if the baby was getting disproportionately heavy. Soon, she felt herself unable to bear the child anymore. So she left the child on the ground and began to pray Purushottama Lord Rama. Soon afterwards she forgot about the event, but all was not over yet. Trinavat, a demon minister of Kansa, had arrived in Gokul as a fierce cyclone. He covered entire Gokul with dust and blinded the people temporarily. For a moment people could not see anything, and during that moment Trinavat blew the baby in air with him. When the dust settled, Yashoda did not find the baby Krishna where she had left him. She felt extremely sorry and fell on ground in depression. Other womenfolk also gathered round her. They too began to cry, not seeing baby Krishna there. In the form of cyclone, the demon Trinavat had blown baby Krishna with him, but he too could not bear his heavy burden. So he began to lose his velocity. Lord Krishna caught him by neck. The demon died in a few moments, and his dead body fell in Vraj. And Yashoda got a new lease of life when she saw baby Krishna safe and sound. Nand and other Gopas too were overjoyed. Naming of Lord Krishna. Once, the supreme ascetic Gargacharya arrived in Gokul. He was the ancestral teacher of Yaduvanshis. Nand joyfully welcomed and treated the hermit. Then he requested him to carry out the ritual of naming and suggest suitable names for both of his sons. Acharya Garg said, "O Nand, everyone knows that I am the ancestral teacher of the Yadavs. If I carry out the naming ritual for these boys, people will understand that they are Devki's sons." So Nand requested Gargacharya to name his sons secretly. Gargacharya accepted his request and carried out the naming rituals secretly in Nand's cattle shed. Garg said, "This son of Rohini will cause by his virtue great pleasures for his near and dear ones. So his second name will be Rama. And because of excessive strength, people will call him as Bala also. Since he will unite the people also, so one of his names would be Sankarshana." Thereafter, Garg said, pointing to Yashodanandan, "He has taken incarnation in every age. In the past ages, he had taken white, red and yellow complexions respectively. This time he has taken dark complexion, so he will be known as Krishna. Once he has been the son of Vasudeva, so people will call him as Vasudeva also. He will cause salvation of all of you, and great joy for the fellow Gopas and cows. With his help, you will overcome even the severe crisis. O Nand, this boy will be equal to Narayana in virtues, wealth, beauty, fame and influence. Foster this child with care and earnestness." Thus naming the boys as per their virtues, Garg returned to his hermitage. Childhood of Lord Krishna. Shukdev says, "O Parikshit, Time passed in Gokul as usual. Balram and Krishna too grew normally. Soon they began to walk on knees and palms. With their childish plays they both amused men and women folk of Gokul. Everyone took special care of them and looked after them to save them from any possible danger. Ladies folk were specially careful about them. Soon afterwards, both the kids began to walk trottingly. Now their movement no longer confined within the boundary of their home. Because of his special virtues, Krishna began to lead other kids of his age group, whereas his elder brother Balram was somewhat serious in nature. Krishna specially enjoyed teasing the girls and milkmaids of Gokul. Often he would eat stealing their milk, curd and butter. At other times, he did not hesitate even to break their pitchers. In such situations the ladies folk used to gather in Nand's home to complain against Krishna. And every time Yashoda promised them to punish Krishna. But every time, when she proceeded to punish him, she forgot everything before his sweet, innocent smile. One day, Balram complained against Krishna, "Ma, the little Kanhaiya has eaten mud." Worried about Krishna's health, Yashoda scolded at him, "Tell me, O mischievous Krishna, why did you eat mud?" At that moment, little Krishna's eyes were moving with fear. He made an excuse, "No ma, I have not eaten any mud. They are telling you a lie. If you don't believe me, see yourself." Saying this, Krishna opened his little mouth. Yashoda peeped into his mouth and what she saw there amazed her. She could not believe it. The entire universe was visible in his little mouth. Yashoda saw strange places, entire Vraj and even herself in the little mouth of Krishna. She felt dizzy. With his illusionary powers, Lord wiped out the memory of this incident from the mind of Yashoda, and she again immersed in love with her child. Ukal Bandhan and salvation of Yamlajun. Once, wishing to feed Krishna with butter, Yashoda began to churn milk in the morning. Very soon, Krishna too awakened and not finding the mother on her bed, he set out to search her. Soon he found her in the courtyard where she was churning the milk. He began to insist for breastfeeding at once. So Yashoda stopped churning and began to breastfeed Krishna. Affection played on her face. Suddenly the milk kept on the fire pot began to boil. Yashoda left Krishna in order to attend the boiling milk. But the unstated Krishna filled with anger and broke the pitcher of curd. Then he went inside and began to eat butter. When Yashoda came back, she understood the matter and began to search him with a stick in her hand. After eating butter himself, Krishna was now feeding the monkeys with it. Seeing the mother come in hot pursuit, Krishna jumped over the motor and ran away. Yashoda chased him, but soon felt tired because of her bulky body. Thereafter, Yashoda proceeded to tie Krishna as a punishment. She got a rope and tried to tie Krishna. But the rope fell short by 2 fingers. She joined many ropes together but the result was same. Every time the ropes fell short by 2 fingers. Soon, Yashoda was bathing in sweat. When Krishna saw his mother in depression, he himself tied in the ropes. Tethering little Krishna to a heavy motor, Yashoda engaged in usual household tasks. Tethered to the motor, Krishna glanced at the 2 Arjuna trees, which were standing on the gate like 2 sentries. He resolved to save them. King Parikshit asked Shukdev about the trees. Shukdev said, "Parikshit, the lord of wealth Kuber had 2 sons Nalkubar and Manigriv. One day they were enjoying the sweet company of pretty women on the bank of Mandakini river. Just by coincidence, Devarshi Narada arrived there. Out of shyness, the women folk at once covered themselves, but both the sons of Kuber stood boldly without feeling any shame. Indignant Narada cursed them to become trees and stay in that form for 100 years. Narada showed kindness as well, that despite being in tree forms, they would have the memory of God alive and would be saved by Lord Sri Krishna. Thus, to keep the words of his supreme devotee Narada, Lord dragged the mortar to the two Arjuna trees. He walked in such a way that the mortar got stuck between the trees. Krishna then pulled the mortar, and in no time the trees were uprooted. Two divine men appeared from the uprooted trees and bowed at the feet of Krishna and prayed him with pure hearts. Then they departed to their heavenly abode. Migration to Rindavna. The uprooted Arjuna trees fell with thundering sound. All the people shivered with fear and felt as if lightning had struck somewhere. All the elders including Nand met together and discussed the matter. Unanimously they concluded that, of late disturbance had increased in Gokul and the circumstances were no longer conducive to raise the kids like Balram and Krishna there. So they unanimously decided to leave Gokul and migrate to a verdant place named Vrindavana. In their opinion, Vrindavana had ample vegetation and fertility to support them and their cattle. Thus, on an auspicious day, the entire population of Gokul set out for Vrindavana. They packed their households on bullock carts and drove their cattle in herds and started in convoy. In Vrindavana they built their houses and started their life once again. Shukdev says, O Parikshit, verdant environment of Vrindavana, Govardhan mountain and crystal clear waters and sandy banks of Yamuna river together filled the hearts of Balram and Krishna with joy. Along with the fellow cowherds, they began diverse kinds of plays there. Salvation of Vasudeva. One day, Balram and Krishna were grazing their cattle on the bank of Yamuna river. A demon, meanwhile, took the guise of a calf and mixed with the herd. Obviously, he had malicious intentions. Lord Krishna had already seen the demon taking calf's guise and mixing up with the herd. He signaled Balram and they together reached near the calf. The calf appeared particularly healthy, so Krishna and Balram mockingly saw it with admiring eyes. Suddenly they held the calf with its hind legs and tail, twirling it in air they threw it in the sky. When the demon died, they threw him on a cart, wood apple, tree. Salvation of Buxor. One day, all the cowherds took their cattle to a large pond to let them drink water. There they saw a huge creature sitting like a hillock on the bank. They were frightened by its appearance. The creature was in fact a demon named Buxor who had arrived there in the guise of a stork. He was himself very strong and had a long pointed bill. As soon as the cowherds drew near him, the stork hastily picked up Krishna and swallowed him. Other cowherds including Balram were stupefied. They could not believe their eyes. But inside the beak, Lord Krishna made himself extremely hot and caused severe burning in demon's throat. So the demon could not swallow Krishna and regurgitated him, and began to hit him with his strong beak. But Lord held his beak with both his hands and tore the demon's mouth apart. And as soon as the demon died, a ripple of joy surged among the cowherds. Salvation of Agassur. One day, Krishna planned a picnic near Nandanvan. So rising early in the morning, he awakened his fellow cowherds sounding a horn. Together, all the cowherds and their cattle went to the forest. There, on the bank of Yamuna river they began to play joyfully. Nandanvan was in fact an abode of the demon Agassur. He was sent there by Kansa. Seeing the boys playing, he felt extremely jealous. Knowing that Krishna had killed his brothers Buxor and sister Putna, it seemed an ideal moment for the demon to avenge the death of his siblings. Thinking thus, the demon took guise of python and lay in the way and opening his mouth like an opening of a cave. The cowherds too fell in his trap. Thus driven by curiosity, all the cowherds entered the demon mouth one by one. When Lord Krishna saw that his friends had entered demon's mouth, he too entered it to protect them. Agassur wanted to masticate the cowherds including Lord Krishna, but the Lord increased his body and choked demon throat. Now the breath of demon stopped. His eyes rolled over and at last his life left his body through Brahmarandra, cosmic pore. With his ambrosial eye, Lord resurrected these dead fellows and their cattle and together they came out of the demon's mouth. As soon as the demon died, a divine flame emerged from the python's mouth. It waited there some time for God. And when Lord Krishna came out, the flame mingled with him. Attachment of Brahma, stealing of cattle and cowherds. Shukdev says, Parikshit, the cowherds told the tale of Agassur's salvation to their parents only after a year of the incidents. During that period of 1 year, Lord Krishna multiplied himself and took the guise of his fellow cowherd and their stock of cattle to remove the illusion of Brahma, who was the cause of the following incidents. After Agassur's life mingled with God, Lord Krishna came with this fellow cowherd on the bank of Yamuna. They left their cattle to graze freely and they sat together to take their lunch. All of the cowherds tasted one another's food, as they wanted to feed Krishna with the tasty food. Meanwhile, surprised by Agassur's salvation, Brahma too had arrived there and saw Krishna eating food defiled by the cowherds. With that sight, Brahma grew suspicious if Krishna was indeed an incarnation of Lord. Thus driven by the illusion and to test the authenticity of Lord's incarnation, Brahma kidnapped all the cattle first, and when Krishna went out to search the cattle, Brahma kidnapped and concealed the cowherds also. Soon Lord Krishna understood the craftiness of Brahma, so he multiplicated himself into his fellow cowherds and cattle. Replicas resembled truly to the cowherds in appearance, complexion, nature, activities, wars, sticks and even in costumes. The replicas remain in existence for complete 1 year. Back there, when Brahma returned after hiding the cowherds and the cattle, he was stunned to see the cowherds and cattle as usual. Brahma was feeling dizzy when Lord bestowed his grace on him. Brahma saw Narayana in every dust particle. Brahma therefore bowed his head at the feet of Lord and said, O Lord, I submit before you. You can be one only with devotion and not by ego. No one can know your omnipresent appearance. Thus praying and worshipping Lord Narayana, Brahma returned to his abode. Shukdev says, the cowherds remained separated from God for 1 year. But they felt as if only half a second had passed because of the illusionary influence of God. That is why they related the incidents of Agassur's killing to their parents only after a year it took place. Salvation of Dhenukasur. When Krishna and Balram entered 6th year of their ages, they got the permission to take the cattle out for grazing. Along with their fellow cowherds, the two brothers too began to take their cattle to Rindavna. Thus they sanctified the earth of Rindavna with their pious feet. Seeing the beauty of Rindavna, with beautiful, colorful flowers and sweet fruits, Lord Krishna felt overjoyed. He then used to graze his cattle at the foothills of Govardhan and on the banks of Yamuna river. Playing flute was his favorite pastime. One day Krishna's beloved friend Sudama said, Kanhaiya, there is a beautiful forest named Talvana. It has uncountable numbers of trees laden with ripe fruits. But a formidable demon Dhenukasur guards that forest. He is very strong. So no one, even animals and birds, doesn't go there. but we are tempted to eat those sweet delicious fruits. If you and Balram wish, we may go there and eat those delicious fruits." Thus hearing this, Krishna and Balram guided all of them to Talvana. There they shook the trees, and in no time a heap of ripe, delicious fruits gathered under the trees. All the cowherds began to eat fruits. While eating, they were also making lot of noises. Disturbed by the sound of fruits falling and noise of the cowherds, the demon Drenukso arrived there as a donkey. He was braying loudly and tried to hit Balram, but Balram caught him by his hind legs and threw him in the air. The demon died in an instant. Since that day, everyone visited Talvana fearlessly and the cattle grazed there freely. Grace on Kaliya the Naga. One day, Balakrishna arrived on the banks of Yamuna with their friends. Balram was not with them that day. The water of the river Yamuna was toxicated by the poison of Kaliya the Naga. It was exceptionally hot that day and all the cowherds and cattle were very thirsty. So without giving any thought, they all drank the water from Yamuna and died. But Lord Krishna resurrected them by his ambrosial sight. Then Lord Krishna decided to purify the waters of Yamuna. Thus tying a cloth round his waist, Krishna climbed a kadam tree and jumped into the river. In the water the Lord started playing and splashing water. Soon the waves began to rise high. When Kaliya the Naga heard the noise, he got extremely angry and appeared before Krishna. He saw a beautiful, tender, dark-complexioned boy playing joyfully in the waters. He stung him and tied him in his spirals. Tied in the spirals of Kaliya, Lord became absolutely motionless. Seeing Krishna in death-like situation, all the cowherds and even the cows felt very sorry. Just then Lord freed himself from the hold of Kaliya. Then a game of hide and seek began between them. Lord dodged the Naga for a long time. Thereafter he rode on Kaliya's hood and began to dance there. The followers of God, like Gandharvas etc. began to play mridang, roll etc. to give him a company. Tired from the blows of Lord's feet, Kaliya soon began to vomit blood. Naga's wives began to pray God, "O Lord, your incarnation is to punish the evil ones for their sins. You have shown your grace on us also. We are fortunate to have a sight and touch of your feet. Pity, O Lord. This Naga can no longer bear your momentum. He will die. We are all your slaves. Kaliya is our Lord. Kindly forgive him." With kindness, Lord released Kaliya, who prayed thus, "O Lord, in your creation we snakes represent tamoguna, dark virtues. We are confused by your illusions." Lord dictated Kaliya to migrate with his family to Ramnakdweep. Since then water of Yamuna became pure for humans and animals. Drinking of Davnal, forest fire, after defeating Kaliya, Lord Krishna and all other people of Vraj felt extremely tired. They were very hungry and thirsty also. So they did not go back to Rindavna, but stayed on the bank of Yamuna in the night. Because of intense heat of summer, surrounding forests had been shriveled. At midnight those shriveled forests caught fire and the sleeping people were engulfed by it. They awakened startled and took shelter at Krishna. Seeing their horrified appearance, Lord Krishna drank the infernal forest fire and thus saved the lives of innocent people who had rested their lives at him with faith. Salvation of Pralambasur. One day, Balram and Krishna were playfully grazing their cattle along with other cowherds in the forests. When a demon Pralamb arrived there with an intention of kidnapping Krishna and Balram. The demon had come in the guise of a cowherd, but the god easily recognized him. They accepted his proposal of friendship, but were thinking about the way for his salvation. God thereafter summoned all his friends and said, "Pals, today we shall divide ourselves into 2 teams and play joyfully." Thus the teams were divided, and each team chose Krishna and Balram as its captain respectively. It was stipulated that the members of defeated team would carry the members of winner team on their back up to the place pointed by them. Thus the game began, and soon both the teams reached a secluded place. At one time, the team headed by Balram won. So the members of Krishna's team were to carry them on their back. Demon Pralambasur offered Balram a ride on his back. Balram agreed to ride on the demon's back, but as soon as he rode on the demon's back, the demon galloped. But he could not go far for not being able to bear Balram's weight. Then the demon regained his huge formidable size and tried to escape by flying. First Balram felt terrorized, but soon he realized his real powers and hit on the demon's head with a powerful fist. The blow shattered demon's head and he fell on earth dead like a huge mountain. Venugeet Sri Shukdeva says, "O king, most of the time of Lord Krishna's boyhood passed in Rindavna. There he grazed cattle and played flute. His flute had a divine, enchanting sound. The gopis, girls, gathered around him under the influence of enchanting tunes. They also heard the enchanting Venugeet that fills one's hearts with the memory of Bhagwat." One of the girls said to her friend, "O dear friend, having the privilege of seeing Lord's beauty and receiving his kindness is the real salvation." Another girl said, "O friend, what penance this flute had observed that it has got a closer contact with lips of Nandanandan, an epithet for Krishna. Even the siblings of this flute, trees and other vegetations are pleased with its fortune and are hence showering their leaves and flowers on him." One more said, "O friend, look, even Bhagwati Lakshmi has left her luxurious abode in Vaikunth and arrived in Vrindavana to have a look of Lord Devkinandan." A gopi expressed her jealousy, "Even this doe is better than us, O friends, look how engrossed is she looking at God, that her eyes are not blinking." Hearing the sweet enchanting tunes of flute, even the heavenly elves gather in the sky over Vrindavana. They also see the beauty of Lord Krishna and showered the flowers of their braids on him. Even the cows forgot grazing when they heard the enchanting music of flute. The cows too forgot drinking milk and began to look at Lord Krishna with joy. This is the real devotion for Lord Krishna. You have to forget yourself in order to find him. Condition of girls of Vrindavana was exactly the same. After having the sight of Lord Krishna, they remembered nothing, not even the way back to home. They stood in the forests in a trance, completely tired, unaware of their self. A girl said, pointing to the fauna, "Look, O friends, look at these birds. Do you know that these birds were the saints and sages in their previous births? In this birth also they are sitting in a state of trance. Look, they have forgotten their knowledge hearing the sweet enchanting music of the flute. And look at Yamunaji. She is also able to contain her exhilaration. She is eagerly splashing her waves to wash Lord's feet." Yet another girl said, "Look friends, the clouds cannot see their Lord scorching in the sun. So they have covered the sun and shaded Lord Krishna. Now they are drizzling as if showering petals." A girl said, "Friends, look, these Gilanis are better than us. They have such a strong urge of Krishna's sight that when Govind returns home, they smear their body with dusts of his feet. Blessed is this mountain which has dedicated its entire self in the feet of Brajnandan and feels overjoyed. It is his supreme devotee. Kanhaiya has infused even non-living things with life by his sweet tunes of flute." Stealing of clothes. The unmarried girls of Rindavna felt as if their lives were dedicated to Lord Krishna. Each of them wished heartily to have Lord Krishna as her husband. So in order to get their desire fulfilled, all of the spinster girls of Vraj began to take bath in Yamuna early in morning of Hemant season and worshipped goddess Katyayani. When Madna Mohan learned that the spinsters girls wished to marry him, he went to see them at dawn. The girls were bathing naked in the river, their clothes were kept on the bank. Lord Krishna stealthily took those clothes and climbed on a kadam tree. Lord had not stolen their clothes with malicious intentions. He had stolen them to remove their flaws and make them realize their real appearance, that they were not mere girls, but pure souls. Without realization of the real self, one cannot experience the God. The girls were in fact the hymns of Vedas, Sadhana, Siddhis, sages and Brahmvidyas, Vedas, themselves, that took the guise of girls to enjoy the vicinity of God. God removed their clothes that symbolized lust. Because of the Lord's grace they all were able to enjoy God's company. Shukdeva says, O Parikshit, thus Lord Krishna removed the shyness of the girls of Vraj through his sweet talks. He derided at them, made them dance like puppets and even stole their clothes when they were bathing naked, but they did not deter his actions. Instead they felt overjoyed by the close presence of their beloved Kanha. Lifting of Govardhan. Shukdev ji says, O Parikshit, one day, Balram and Krishna saw that many delicious kind of sweetmeats were being cooked at home. With curiosity and politeness, they asked Nand and other elders, Father, which festival are you preparing for? Which god will be worshipped? What purpose will such worship serve? Nand Baba explained, Sons, Devaraj Indra is the god of clouds. It is because of Indra's grace we get rain. So these materials are being prepared to worship Indra. Krishna said, Father, every creature in the world enjoys comforts or suffers as per his fate. None of the gods can change the results. Action is prime in the world. One gets the results as per his actions. Even Indra is God as a result of his action. Anyone who performs 100 Ashwamedh Yagyas becomes Indra. But even after performing crores of Ashwamedh Yagyas, one cannot get a stay in Vraj. It is the duty of Indra to cause rain. So it will rain even if you don't worship Indra. But to feed the poor and satisfy them with clothes and other gifts is real worship. By their blessing, we shall be more happier. I desire that with all these materials we should worship Giriraj Govardhan and distribute the prasad among the poor, with which their souls will be sated and will have the grace of God. Thus Lord Krishna told his father that all the people should worship unitedly and unitedly they should receive prasad. If you are ready to do as per my desire, it's all right, otherwise I will not worship your haughty God, nor receive his prasad. Thus convinced by Kanhaya's wise reasoning, all the Gopas agreed to him. Nand Baba said, O Krishna, we are making all these preparation for you only and we will do as you say. We will worship Govardhan. For us Govardhan is also like a god. It gives us grass, water, and fuel etc., which are necessary for our lives. Thus with Lord's consent, they dropped their plan to worship Indra and resolved to worship Govardhan faithfully. Worship of Govardhan on the Purnima, full moon, day in the month of Kartik, November, all the Gopas, people of Vraj region, gathered near Mount Govardhan. During the night all of them circumambulated the mountain. Lord invoked the Ganges by his wish and bathed Govardhan with her water. Then they put vermilion on it, offered basa leaves, flowers etc. and worshipped it. Brahmins recited hymns in its praise. To make the people believe in their rituals, Lord Krishna himself appeared on the mountain in huge form and exclaimed, "I am Giriraj, the king of the mountain," and began to eat the offerings. But he as a child was still among the villagers who faithfully bowed before the mountain. Among them, the child Krishna said, "Look, what a surprise, Giriraj has appeared himself and bestowed his grace on us. He has accepted our worship." Thereafter all the Gopas distributed prasad among themselves and felt supremely satisfied. Angry retaliation of Indra, Shukdeva said, "Parikshit, when Indra learned that the Gopas had stopped worshipping him, he grew outrageous. In anger, he ordered the clouds to rain torrentially over Vraj and cause heavy flood in Vraj region. In no time dense clouds gathered over Vraj. Soon there was lightning, thunder, darkness and storm all around. Then it rained torrentially. All the people took refuge at Lord Krishna and prayed him to save them from the anger of Indra. Lord Krishna said, "Those who regard me as their, are mine and I am theirs, so there is no need to worry for you." Saying this, Lord lifted Giriraj on his little finger and called all the people of Vraj along with their cattle under the lee of Govardhan. Then he ordered his wheel Sudarshan to absorb the water of the clouds so that not even a single drop could fall on earth. Thus for 7 days continuously Lord balanced Govardhan on the little finger. Thus Lord Krishna also came to be known as Giridhari. People who had gathered around him just kept on seeing Lord's moon-like face and hence did not feel thirsty or hungry. In fact, the comforts those people got during those 7 days are beyond verbal description. Lord held Govardhan on one hand and conch in the other, while with the remaining 2 hands he began to play this flute. Hearing the tunes of his flute, all the people of Vraj began to dance with joy. After the rains stopped, all of them returned to their homes. When Indra learned about the happenings in Vraj, he soon realized his mistake. Indra himself reached Vraj and begged Lord for his pardon. Then he gave Lord a ceremonial bath with the milk of Surbhi for protecting the cows. Thus the Lord also got one more name, Govind. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.